Welcome to the JOMA podcast, presented by the Jewish Orthodox Women's Medical Association. Every week, hear from expert medical professionals as they share up-to-date insights on health topics to help you live your best life physically, mentally, and emotionally. Join us as we navigate the ever-changing landscape of healthcare and strive to improve the health of the Orthodox Jewish community.
Welcome to the JOMA podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jennie Berkovich, board-certified pediatrician and JOMA's Director of Education. Today's guest is someone who I've been wanting to talk to for a really long time. Sunny Levi is one of 10 female certified 7th degree black belts in the country. She has been training in Taekwondo for over 35 years and has been teaching and coaching children, teens, and adults for over 20 years. In addition to being a Taekwondo master and elite athlete who was once on a path to the Olympics, Sunny is also a faith-based life coach, martial arts therapist for Kids Kicking Cancer, which we talk a lot about, a personal fitness trainer, and a yoga and self-defense instructor. She's passionate about empowering her students with the skills and mindset they need to survive dangerous situations in both body, mind, and spirit. She's a mother of 6, an Orthodox Jew, and passionate about clean eating, hiking, and being best friends with God. I hope you enjoy this episode.
Hi, Sunny. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I've wanted to talk to you for a really long time, and just like we were chatting before the episode started, I kept trying to think of like what kind of like wellness or health spin can I put on our conversation, because I know you do a lot of work in wellness and a lot of work in mindfulness and things like that. And when I was researching all your amazing background, I came across something very cool that you do, which is your involvement with an organization called Kids Kicking Cancer. So to start off, tell me maybe a little bit about how you got involved with that organization.
Sure. Well, to get involved, first of all, you have to be a martial artist. So that was already there. And my father, who I was very, very close with, he actually struggled with cancer for many years before he passed away from it. And so that really gave me a sensitivity and a feeling like I want to help people, with cancer, if there's any way I could. I was just so involved with him and his process and everything. And I watched him trying to manage his pain and manage his symptoms and doing breathing and doing meditation, which I thought was great. And then years later, after he passed away, I saw that Kids Kicking Cancer was doing this with kids. And I was like, this is amazing. They're actually using the martial arts as a vehicle for healing and for pain management. And it's so therapeutic. And so as soon as I heard about it, I was like really drawn to get involved. And so I reached out to the founder.
That's really interesting. Is it common for people who are involved in martial arts to like take that approach? Because I think generally when people think about martial arts, they either think of it as like someone teaches martial arts or they're like competitive in that field. So this seems like totally not something that I would think of as being associated with martial arts.
You're so right. So a lot of people think of it as combative or competitive. So there's the hard martial arts and there's the soft martial arts, and I've definitely been involved and am involved in both. And you're right. People who are really in it for the combative part of the competition part, they may not be interested in this. This may not be their jam at all. For me, it's something I went for, and I know a lot of people that are my colleagues are not interested. They're just not.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm a pediatrician, as you know, so this really, really resonates with me. I'm always interested in different organizations that support kids who have any sort of chronic medical condition. So this was really interesting to me. Tell me like a little bit about the story behind the organization that you know.
Sure. Well, the founder of it is a rabbi, Orthodox rabbi named Rabbi Goldberg, and he is a black belt. When he was younger, his oldest daughter was, I think, 3 years old. She passed away from leukemia. And then I don't remember all the exact steps, but he was involved in helping at cancer camps. And one day while he was at this camp, there was a child who was in the process of being pinned down to be given some sort of injection or medication. And this child was screaming and kicking and was really, really afraid of the injection. And the rabbi came in and just basically said, like, let me teach you how to be a powerful martial artist. And this is how it got started. He just on the spot figured to like teach this kid some metaphoric martial arts and some mindset and some breathing and how to think and how to take control and be powerful in your mind Because when you're going through something like that physically, you feel so weak. You have no say, you have no control, but you do have control. You still can control yourself and your breath and your thoughts. And that's the real power. And he was able to teach this kid on the spot a simple breathing technique that then helped this kid take control of himself, find his personal power, handle the injection without the need for being pinned down, without screaming and crying and kicking. And this, he said, was when Kids Kicking Cancer was born. That's when he realized there's really something here. This can be a vehicle for helping people. And it has just expanded. It's across the world now in many countries, and a lot of people are benefiting.
It sounds very concrete. I think when I initially heard about it, or like when people think about like martial arts and being taught to children with a medical diagnosis, they maybe think of it as like, oh, you teach it to them as like a distraction, or you teach it as like a fun activity, right? So they can like have a normal experience. You know, there's a lot of camps that do that. But what you're describing is like actual concrete skills and tools and techniques that they can use as a form to help them navigate and process the treatment.
Totally. Yes. And depending on the child, like if they're well enough, they get up and they can do moves, and if they're able to, right? But let's say they're in a hospital bed and they're attached to things and they can't move, they can still do it. Then we do more of the mental side of things, but there's also the physical. So we have both, and depending on, we meet the child where they're at, and it's extremely concrete, as you're saying. Yeah, they apply it right away. Right away.
That's amazing. So obviously I know zero about martial arts. So talk to me like I know zero about martial arts. Are there any specific martial arts techniques or like exercises that you teach kids?
Do you mean through Kids Kicking Cancer?
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah. I'd say the most popular and the most powerful things that we work on are breathing techniques and breathing and meditation techniques to help them overcome and manage anxiety, fear, and pain. So those, the main ones that we work on are power breathing techniques, body scans, where we learn to relax the body and take control of ourselves through our breath and our mind, and then the ninja needle technique, which is extremely helpful for dealing with pain. And a lot of these kids have a lot of painful things going on. So we teach them how to do it, and then we are actually with them in the hospital when they are getting treatment, and we guide them through, we coach them through, we talk them through, and it makes all the difference. And then they become independent, they can do it on their own. And it's always amazing when the hospital staff says, I've never seen anything like this before. This kid just on their own is going into themselves, breathing, closing their eyes, being so strong. And these kids find their true inner strength. And that's really the power of a martial artist. It's really you versus you. It's your own mind. It's your brain. That's the strongest muscle in the body, and that's what we got to learn how to activate and take control of ourselves, with our mind.
I love that. I was reading a little bit about the different techniques on the website, and there's some videos that are very powerful because you really see like the kids going through each of the things. Tell me a little more about Ninja Needle. It, again, really resonates with me just because I've seen kids undergo so many like painful experiences, and not even necessarily in the context of having a chronic medical disease, right? Medical diagnosis, right? Kids often come to the doctor, and even like a routine kid who doesn't have any underlying issues may get shots or blood draws and things like that. And I think could be really scary for some kids. So tell me a little more about Ninja Needle.
Sure. So the Ninja Needle technique is sort of like based off of the physical martial arts technique of, imagine you have two opponents and they're pushing at each other like this. Okay. Now, let's say you and I are struggling and we're both pushing at each other, and we're both very strong. We're going to just keep pushing and pushing until somebody gets tired, but it's exhausting, right? So the idea is when you're being pushed against something else, a smart martial artist would change the strategy. Instead of pushing, they would pull. So if you're pushing me, and instead of pushing you, I pull you, then I control you, and then I can throw you across the room. It works really beautifully physically. If you can imagine it. Can you see it? We're pushing each other.
I'm a little stressed. I'm a little stressed thinking about it.
Okay.
But yes.
It's really cool to be able to see this physically, because you literally see how you're taking that person's energy and throwing them across the room and redirecting them wherever they want to go. So we do this with pain as well. So we say that the needle is pushing and you're pushing. Let's say you're resisting it. I don't want this. It's so scary, and you're going to get it anyways. It's going to face it, right? This kid is going to get this needle. So instead of pushing against it and struggling, which makes it worse and makes you tired and it's stressful and cortisol goes up and it's just a whole mess, right? Learn to pull it toward you. It's meaning we learn to pull the pain in, like this. We draw it in. We're conscious of it. I'm taking you hurt me, but I'm pulling you. And then I'm blowing you and like forcing you away with my breath and my mind. And it's just a different way of thinking about it, really. But when you get into this headspace and you really get your thoughts around it, when you do this, you're not really feeling the pain. You're thinking, I'm taking the pain, I'm pulling it in close to me, and then I'm breathing it away. And this really works. I can't tell you how many times I've sat with kids when they've been getting extremely painful medical procedures and they're doing this and they're just sticking with the breath. And then when it's over, they'll sometimes say things like, did the nurse start yet? Like, did the nurse start yet?
Wow.
Like, you just finished like this. Yeah. So it's very powerful.
That's amazing. I'm trying to imagine how this is working, and I'm thinking like our listeners are hearing you describe this. It's a lot of work, right? This isn't like an easy thing. Like, okay, I got it. Next time I'm gonna have a painful procedure. Like, I'm gonna get it. Like, no, right? It's a lot of work, and
Yeah.
I'm an adult, and I'm thinking it's a lot of work. How does this practically work when you're teaching kids to do this? I'm sure it's not easy.
We have to practice it a lot of times. Sometimes we don't have the luxury of practicing a lot of times. Sometimes, like, there'll be times where we'll just teach them on the spot for a few minutes and get them into, we first have to get them calm, right? Get them into a certain state of mind, empower them to understand that they do have the power within them, and that as I said before, the real power is in your mind, and once they're in a state like that, and once they're calm and they've taken control of their breath, they can do this. And it's also good to practice with small things. Like, let's say you stub your toe, right? And it hurts. You imagine you could be like, oh, right? But the pain's there anyways. But you say to the pain, come here, pain. You breathe it in. You imagine you're pulling that pain in, and then you blow it out, and you imagine you're getting rid of it. Okay. So we practice this with the kids when we have the luxury to, with a pinwheel, and they practice blowing on it. And if they're doing a good job, like, it will circle fast. We practice by coming up to their arm, pretend, there's nothing in our hands, but we run through it like it's role play. Like, I'm the nurse and here's the alcohol pad. And usually they start with their anxiety right then.
Yeah.
But we already have them start breathing, take control right now, and then we pretend to do an injection, and we keep coaching them through the breathing technique. And they become good at it. They really do. I know it sounds hard, but it's amazing. It's amazing when a person believes in it and wants to and puts their mind to it, they really can. They really can get into a state of focusing on the breath and the power instead of the pain.
So I think you touched on something that I want to expand on a little bit. This concept of martial arts being a practical tool for dealing with even small things like stubbing your toe, and obviously larger and more significant painful experiences. So maybe tell me some thoughts you have on how practicing martial arts in general can benefit physical and mental health. Obviously, it's an exercise, so we know it's good for your body, but I'm getting the sense that there's a lot more to it.
There's a lot more to it, because built into the art itself is the idea of perseverance. Built into it also is like, you are going to learn how to fall. We're going to teach you how to fall because you're going to be knocked down. Let's face it. And this just transfers over. So you learn these life skills of, I can fall, but I can pick myself back up. It is normal to fall. And you know what I mean? It's normal in life to have setbacks. So we learn about bouncing back. We learn about perseverance and discipline. This is built into it. And I think there's nothing that builds confidence like your own self-discipline. And the more you can feel good about yourself following through with the things you set out to do, that strengthens your self-esteem, right? So not only it's good for a person mentally because they're building up their discipline, their self-esteem, their self-respect, their perseverance. It's so good for them physically too, because there's so much we're doing physically, whether it's working on flexibility, balance, coordination, stamina, strength. You need quick reflexes, you need coordination, all this stuff you get trained in. And when you're in your body and you feel so connected to your body and your breath, and your mind is like sharp in your body, it's an amazing feeling of mind-body connection. And it's just, I think that leads to just so much powerful, positive mental health,
Sure. For sure. We talk a lot about like resiliency, and right being a really important component of mental health, especially for kids. So what I'm hearing you describe is like it's not just like the physical act of actual right martial
Right.
arts. There's a huge mental component to it as well.
Yeah, big time. I have been teaching for over 20 years, and I'd say a nice majority of the kids that I have worked with have been sent to me by their parents because they either have been, struggling with ADHD, they have been at risk in some way, um, or they have had anxiety. And the parents will say things like, just by practicing the forms with the focus of the mind and the breath, this regulates their emotions. Or I've seen so many students be able to come out of a negative, worried, or depressed headspace and find joy and confidence because of this. This is because it's such a good outlet. Because where else are you encouraged to hit things and yell loud, and maybe it's a great outlet and it's a great release and it's calming afterwards, but at the same time you know that it's not just like you're having a tantrum and you're out of control. This is a controlled way of doing something where at the same time you're growing, you're getting stronger, you're working toward a goal, and it's a great feeling to achieve something, to set goals and achieve. And that's what the belt process is all about, like the belt levels. And it gives, I think, the idea of like I'm testing for my next belt in a few months, I got to train, this helps you stay on track. Like, well, I need to sleep, well, I need to eat right, I need to take care of my body if I wanted to be able to do all of these physical things. And so it becomes a very holistic mind, body, spirit sort of activity if you take it seriously, because you understand if you want your body and your mind to be there, you need so much focus, right, to be able to do martial arts. You need so much self-control and focus. So you got to be all in. And I think over time you come to realize, well, I can't just eat junk food and expect my mind to be sharp. I can't just not sleep or not take care of myself physically, right, if I want to be good at this.
So you mentioned the physical aspect and the mental health, but what's like the spiritual, or maybe there isn't one, but like what is there like a spiritual component to martial arts? Because it's possible that someone may feel like uncomfortable with that piece of it, like, oh, that's not something I want to experience or I want my kids to experience.
Right. So some martial arts do have that more built in. In Taekwondo, it's not taught that way at all. But I think for the martial artist who really delves in, they're going to find their own spiritual connection. I know that I did. I know that through the martial arts, it really helped me connect deeper to my soul and to God, and to really find my way back to a very healthy and loving relationship with God. And even if you remove spirituality from martial arts, because most martial arts that's taught today is not going to give that to you. It's not part of the package. And if it is, I'll tell you, a lot of Jews are not going to be signing up for it, because it's not going to be Jewish spirituality at all. It's going to be something else. So you don't go to martial arts necessarily for that, but you find the spiritual because the spiritual is the physical and the physical is the spiritual. And you could see how they're so intertwined. And when you start to find yourself and find your breath and understand yourself more and be in your body and understand like that there's just so much more. I don't know, like there's so many ways it can take a person in a spiritual direction. Let's put it that way.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. So for example, when in the martial arts, you gain a lot of self-discipline, and self-discipline is something that you take with you in every area of your life. Spiritually, you actually need a lot of discipline. If you want to be able to stick to any sort of routine or practice or any sort of spiritual practice you might have, it's got to be, you got to have a level of discipline. You can't just let it be like, well, I'm feeling it, I'm not inspired today, I am inspired today, right? We need to have consistency if we want to grow spiritually. And one thing that I've been doing over the past couple of years is I've sort of taken the martial arts in a spiritual direction, and I teach spiritual self-defense and spiritual empowerment. And it's the same principles of martial arts. I actually sometimes feel like I'm teaching martial arts, but spiritually, meaning I'm teaching people the power of connecting to God through personal prayer, through having their own heartfelt relationship with God, how to do that, how to make it consistent, how to have it be a built-in non-negotiable part of your daily life, and how to make it be the powerful and transformative practice that it is. And through that, how to build faith. I see building faith as the way I see building muscle, and we know that when we build muscle, you need resistance. The resistance helps you grow stronger. And so taking metaphors from the martial arts and from the fitness world and applying it spiritually and mentally has been something that I've been doing and really helping women change their lives around. Finding more inner peace, more joy, more calm, stronger connection to God, to themselves, more confidence to be able to make the changes they want to make in their life, whether it's personal changes, moving forward, and whether it's business or in their parenting or relationships or their own growth. This is what it's led to. And it's really been very powerful for hundreds of women that I've been working with.
I want to emphasize that this too is a really critical piece of wellness that I think often gets overlooked. It's not necessarily part of a traditional discussion that a doctor will have, but there are so many studies that having a strong spiritual connection, whatever that means for somebody, actually helps tremendously in terms of how they tolerate stress, how they recover from diseases, their risk factors of getting chronic diseases later in life, and is actually associated with a longer lifespan. So it's all, I think, really, really important when we look at holistic wellness.
Absolutely.
I want to go back to something that we talked about in the beginning, where you mentioned, like, for many people who do martial arts, maybe the approach to using it as a way to help, kids deal with painful experiences may not necessarily resonate. So I think maybe the opposite of that could also be true, where in general, people who may not be informed initially think of martial arts as this combative, potentially maybe even like violent experience. The way you describe it sounds like completely different. So how can self-defense training be approached in a healthy and non-violent way, in a way that promotes wellness, the way that you're describing?
I think coming at it from the point of view of, this is for you, for your self-preservation, for your self-respect. This is why we're doing this, right? We're not doing this to hurt people. That's not the goal. It's not meant to be violent. Okay, if violence has to happen, let it be in your defense, not in your demise. And I think that I think a lot depends on the teacher and their outlook. And yes, there are places where it's just like gory and violent. It doesn't have to be that way. I don't teach that way. I'm not saying the moves I teach are not lethal, but I think it's just coming at it from a more gentle and more mindful, and like, this is for you love yourself. You have to take care of yourself. You respect yourself. You should know how to handle yourself. You'll feel empowered. It's good for you. And this is how we're going, this is how you do it. And I think I think pretty much it's the energy of the mindset behind it. Does that make sense?
It does. So I think maybe it might be helpful, at least for me. I think I'm finding it helpful to think about this as from a self-defense angle, right? There's martial arts in like you mentioned, competition way, right? It's in a way that potentially could be used in violence, but you're really describing in a way of self-defense and not necessarily always physical self-defense, right? There's a lot of like things coming at us, and the way that you're speaking about it tells me that martial arts can be used as a way to like really heal yourself and protect yourself from all sorts of negative influence.
Yes.
Have you seen that in your work with kids, not necessarily even through kids kicking cancer? I know you do a lot of work with teaching self-defense, like you mentioned, kids maybe who have issues with like emotional regulation or some behavioral health issues. Have you seen self-defense be a tool that helps them navigate those things?
I've seen it help, yes, build their confidence, help them strengthen their mental focus, and just lead to more balance in their life. I've definitely seen that. I think that self-esteem piece is huge, and it shouldn't be underestimated, because when a person's not feeling good about themselves, it leads to a whole bunch of behaviors and decisions. Yeah. It really does. So it might just sound like one small thing, but I think when that's strong, a person makes better choices. When a person's living with self-respect, it really matters. And I think that the martial arts has helped so many people with that, in my experience. So many people learn to really value themselves and respect themselves, and also reduce stress. And when having an outlet for trauma or pain or any negative emotion, it's also so healthy. It's so therapeutic. And like, I think they just feel better, and they know they have a place that they can come to release that and be understood and be themselves, be free, and then it leads to such positive change.
What would you say to somebody, and I'm just thinking of like if I'm presenting this to maybe a patient of mine or like to a family that I think would benefit from this, what would you say to somebody who was like, that all sounds great, but it doesn't sound like it's for girls. This sounds like something boys would be good at. It doesn't sound like something girls would be good at. What would your response be?
That's so funny. It's definitely for girls. I teach majority girls, and I've been teaching majority, and I think that girls are amazing at it. And I could see why they would think that on the outside, but that's just a superficial way of looking at it. I think that girls resonate with it so much. It's so healthy for girls to be empowered and to walk around feeling like, if somebody were to mess with me, I know what to do. I'm not going to be a victim. I have a voice. I know how to say no. This is so important. And also, a lot of girls love the physical movement of it. There's a flow to it, the training. There's building strength and flexibility in your body, and feeling strong feels amazing. And I think that girls have, I mean, anyone, but like a girl needs that. A girl needs to feel strong and confident in her body physically also. And
Sure.
I think that this is such an amazing sport, even if you just look at it as a sport, because there's so much to gain. I'm not putting any other sport down, but what other sport do you really take with you if you needed to on the street? You know what I mean? Like, this translates into something very practical. It's not just fun, and it's not just something that will, give you more muscle tone or more stamina or more strength or something like that, but it really works in a lot of other ways too. So it's a tremendous payoff.
I love that. We covered a lot of ground. We talked a lot about the amazing work that you do teaching kids self-defense and martial arts. Is there any one last thing that you want to share as like a takeaway? Any like maybe common misconceptions that you come across a lot?
I think one of the most common ones is something we kind of touched upon, which is that people think if you do martial arts, you must be a violent person, right? You must be an angry person. I got that all the time growing up. I felt very misunderstood from being so involved in the martial arts. And if you know me, you know that I'm anything but violent and angry. And so I think that people don't have it right. And I remember people saying to me, like, aren't you afraid you'll never get married, that no one will ever want to marry you because they're going to think that you're like so violent? And I was thinking, like, what do you think you've never been in a martial arts class, so what do you think it actually is? Do you know what I mean? And I think just breaking that misconception is important, because yes, it's physical, and yes, there's fighting involved, but listen, it's almost like a chess game in some ways. Do you know what I mean? Like, it takes so much skill and so much mind control, and the inner work that we have to do is so great. And I think that people should know that too. There's so much going on there with the mind and the breath and everything that we've spoken about, and it's actually very peaceful. The martial arts are actually very peaceful. They create a lot of peace in a person, a lot of inner peace.
I love that. I love that there's like so many different components to it that can all help support wellness, whether it's just to like prevent, right? And sort of like get yourself to a good place where you can withstand the stress that's going to come at you in life. And also as a way of like healing and using it as a tool, right? As we talked about on kids who are maybe having some painful procedures. So this was fascinating. Thank you so much. This was such a cool conversation, and I really appreciate your time today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the JOMA podcast. We welcome your feedback and ideas for future episodes. Send us an email at health@joma.org. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform.